What do you do when the world stops listening? What happens when every move you make is met with silence? Worse, with laughter? And what does it feel like to realize that no matter how hard you push, how carefully you craft the image, how loud you scream, nobody cares anymore? That's exactly the spiral Meghan Markle allegedly found herself in. And it wasn't behind palace walls or tucked away in a private estate. No, this was global, brutal, and irreversible. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. According to multiple insiders and damning headlines, what Meghan thought would be her grand moment, her strategic strike to upstage Kate Middleton and reclaim the spotlight, ended not with applause, but with deafening indifference. No trending hashtags, no glowing headlines, no royal chaos, just a storm of memes, rolled eyes, and one cold, unrelenting truth. The world had moved on. You see, this wasn't just another petty moment in the never-ending royal soap opera. No, this was something far more seismic. Because for Meghan, this wasn't just about besting Kate or overshadowing William. This was about survival, about legacy, about relevance. And it backfired spectacularly. But before we dive into the private screams echoing through Montecito's walls, the quiet power move that Kate Middleton executed with surgical precision, and the exact moment Meghan Markle realized her playbook had completely collapsed, we need to understand the desperation behind the move. Why now? Why this? Let's rewind the clock a few days. It started with a photograph. A single image of Prince William and Princess Kate at a public engagement, smiling, elegant, commanding attention. The kind of photo that instantly captures headlines and fuels global admiration. You know the type. It's the kind that triggers a PR panic in Montecito. And, according to those in the know, that's exactly what happened. Behind the scenes, Meghan allegedly convened her team. Fast. Something had to be done. A countermove. A moment. Something. Anything. To steal the thunder back. Some say she called in favors. Others claim she tried to plant stories. There are whispers of frantic phone calls to Netflix execs, urgent requests for media coverage, and even a last-minute public appearance designed to draw attention away from Kate. And yet, nothing landed. Nothing. Kate's elegance had stolen the show, and not because she tried. That's the thing that's always driven Meghan mad, according to sources. Kate doesn't need to scream. She doesn't need to orchestrate a narrative. The world simply leans in. That's the core tension of this entire saga. Two women, two images, one crowned with effortless grace, the other fighting tooth and nail for a crown that no longer fits. And this time, Meghan's desperate bid to recapture attention only highlighted her dwindling relevance. But here's where it gets wild. Meghan didn't just fail to upstage Kate. She sparked a storm of backlash. Online forums lit up. X, formerly Twitter, trended with scathing commentary. Former allies in the media turned cold. Even some Hollywood insiders, once eager to align with Meghan, began distancing themselves. One brutal headline read, "From Duchess to Desperate, Meghan's last gasp for attention falls flat." And the worst part? Kate didn't say a word. No public statement. No reaction. Just a serene smile and a photo that did more damage to Meghan's PR machine than any palace press release ever could. Let that sink in. Because while Meghan's team scrambled, trying to reframe the narrative, the royal family did what they always do, waited, watched, and won. Now, before you assume this is just another clickbait feud or a manufactured media circus, understand this. There is real tension here, real fallout, real consequences. This isn't just about titles and tiaras anymore. This is about the slow, humiliating collapse of a brand that was once on fire. A brand built on rebellion, victimhood, and independence. A brand that promised disruption, but delivered division. And this latest implosion? It may be the final nail. Because this time, Meghan didn't just lose the narrative. She lost the room. According to insiders, even those closest to her began questioning the strategy. Was it wise to keep poking at the royals? Was it smart to try and outshine the future queen? Was it time to rethink everything? But Meghan? She wasn't ready to retreat. Not yet. In fact, according to one anonymous source who claims to have worked closely with her PR team, Meghan doubled down. She wanted a media push. She wanted coverage. She wanted the headlines to care again. Instead, she got the worst thing possible, Mockery. Silence. And that one word she's never been able to stomach. Z-lister. It's the term that's now haunting her every move. Once hailed as a symbol of modern royalty, she's now being casually dismissed by commentators and social media critics alike. Nobody cares anymore. That's the brutal phrase making the rounds. But is it true? Is this really the end of Meghan Markle's reign as a global headline maker? Or is there still a twist coming? A moment that flips the script again? Because let's be clear, Meghan doesn't go quietly. And if history has shown us anything, it's that when her back is against the wall, she lashes out, not with fury, but with strategy, with a carefully plotted move. One final shot. That's what we're about to explore. Over the next chapters, we're going to break down everything. Every whispered call, every strategic photo drop, every attempt to recapture the spotlight. We'll take you inside Montecito's media war room. We'll show you how Kate's silent power dismantled months of planning in a single image. We'll reveal the humiliating behind-the-scenes fallout at a Hollywood event that left Meghan fuming. And we'll end with a question that might define this era. Did Meghan lose the battle or the entire war? But first, before the Hollywood freeze-outs, the leaked emails, the screaming behind closed doors, there was a moment, a scene. A quiet event that should have been simple until Meghan made it anything but. Because the story doesn't start with Meghan shouting. It starts with her watching Kate, and realizing she would never be her. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. How do you steal the spotlight when you're not even on the stage? That's the question that allegedly consumed Meghan Markle the moment she saw the headlines. Because that image, was everywhere. Kate Middleton, regal, smiling, walking alongside Prince William at a charity event in London. No theatrics, no PR circus, just the kind of serene, authentic moment that connects with millions. It was soft power in action. It was grace without effort. And it was devastating for Meghan. Because make no mistake, this wasn't just a public appearance for the Princess of Wales. It was a reminder, a subtle but powerful message to the world. The royals are fine without you. And that was Meghan's worst nightmare. According to sources close to the couple, Meghan had been quietly building toward a media moment of her own. Rumors swirled of a new podcast rollout, a branded partnership, even a potential red carpet appearance meant to reinsert her into the Hollywood zeitgeist. But suddenly, it didn't matter. All eyes were on Kate. The media, the public, even the diehard Sussex supporters online. Everyone was buzzing about the Princess of Wales and her effortless return to royal duty. And Meghan? She was stuck watching it all unfold from a filtered Instagram story and a blank press calendar. So what did she do? She planned a countermove. Now here's where it gets interesting, because this wasn't the first time Meghan had tried to outmaneuver the palace narrative. In the past, she'd strategically timed interviews, leaks, even Netflix trailers to clash with royal events. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But this time, the stakes were higher. The desperation was louder. Because for Meghan, this wasn't just about relevancy. It was about control. It was about reminding the world that she was still a force, still a brand, still a voice worth listening to. But here's the cruel twist of irony. In trying to reclaim the narrative, she exposed the very thing she was trying to hide, how little impact she now had. Let's zoom in. The moment Kate's photo went viral, Meghan's PR wheels started spinning. According to insider chatter, frantic calls were placed to her team. Ideas flew. Press angles were debated. Should they drop a podcast teaser? Leak a new project? Stage a spontaneous paparazzi walk? Eventually, they settled on something subtle but symbolic, a public appearance tied to women's empowerment. Strategic, on-brand, safe, but also hollow. Because when the appearance finally happened, the results were underwhelming. Coverage was minimal. Social media engagement? Flat. The Daily Mail buried it beneath a royal baby story. Even People magazine, which once offered glowing coverage, ran it as a footnote. And Meghan noticed. She was livid. One alleged source told a Hollywood gossip blogger. She thought this was going to be her moment. Instead, nobody cared. Nobody. Think about that. For someone who once dominated global headlines, who broke the internet with every outfit, every quote, every eyebrow raise, to suddenly be ignored? That's not just frustrating. That's terrifying. But here's the kicker. It wasn't just the press who turned a blind eye. It was the public. Comment sections that once gushed over Meghan's style now openly mocked her timing. Social media threads accused her of trying too hard. Even neutral observers began drawing comparisons. She's trying to be Kate, and it's just not working. Now pause for a second. Can you imagine the emotional weight of that moment? To be watching your biggest rival shine effortlessly while your own playbook is falling apart in real time. It wasn't just a PR failure. It was personal, because Kate wasn't doing anything dramatic. She wasn't staging interviews or making bold statements. She was simply showing up, representing the monarchy with composure and grace. And the world adored her for it. Meanwhile, Meghan was trying everything and getting nothing. That kind of contrast stings, especially for someone who spent years building a brand around being heard, being bold, being seen. But now, she was fading, and that's when the panic kicked in. Allegedly, Meghan began demanding answers from her team. Why wasn't this working? Where was the media traction? Why was Kate still dominating the headlines? But the truth was unavoidable. The public had made a choice. They were no longer buying what Meghan was selling. And here's where the contradictions start stacking up. Because for years, Meghan's brand was built on rebellion, on breaking free from the royal system, on speaking out, on forging her own path. And for a time, that worked. She was the underdog, the truth teller, the woman who dared to walk away. But now, that same narrative felt tired. Audiences weren't connecting with the rebellion anymore. They were craving stability, positivity, grace. And Kate was serving it in spades. Let's get real. In the court of public opinion, perception is everything. And right now, Kate was being seen as the future queen with compassion and quiet strength. Meghan? A Hollywood player stuck in the wrong game. One commentator put it bluntly. Meghan tried to play chess with the monarchy, but she forgot the queen always protects her king and controls the board. Ouch. But here's what made it worse. According to whispers from Montecito insiders, Meghan knew it. She saw the disconnect. She felt the indifference. And she hated it. That's why, allegedly, things started to unravel behind the scenes. Her staff noticed the mood shift. Sources say she became more demanding, more erratic. One aide reportedly described her as combustible. It wasn't about Kate anymore. It was about the silence. Because silence, to Meghan, is the ultimate rejection. It's the opposite of relevance. It's the death of her narrative. And when the headlines didn't roar, when the cameras didn't follow, something inside her snapped. That scream? It didn't come from anger. It came from fear. The fear that her moment had passed. The fear that Kate had won. The fear that she was no longer in control of her own story. Now you might be asking, is this really the beginning of the end? Has Meghan truly lost the crown she built in Hollywood? Or is this just the beginning of another reinvention? Because let's be honest, she's pulled off comebacks before. From royal exile to Netflix deals. From tabloid scandal to brand partnerships. Meghan doesn't just disappear. She regroups. She recalibrates. She strikes back. But this time, the landscape is different. The world isn't just watching. It's yawning. And that's a whole new kind of danger. So what happens next? What's the play after desperation fails? What do you do when nobody's listening? Well, you scream. And then you try again. Because in Chapter 2, we'll unpack exactly what Meghan did next. How she scrambled to salvage her brand. The phone calls she made. The media blitz she planned. And how even Netflix started pulling away. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What do you do when your Plan A crashes, Plan B fizzles, and Plan C? Well, even that won't return your calls. This is the place Meghan Markle allegedly found herself in. Stranded somewhere between fame fatigue and brand extinction. And in this chapter, we're diving headfirst into the unraveling. The quiet collapse of her Hollywood ambitions. The ghosted calls. The shifting alliances. The cold reality of a world that no longer revolved around her. Because if Chapter 1 was about the missed spotlight, this is about what happens when even the backup lights start dimming. And it starts with one name, Netflix. Remember when the Sussexes' mega deal with Netflix was hailed as the ultimate post-royal power move? $100 million. Global platform. Creative freedom. A seat at the top table of entertainment. It was supposed to be their empire. But what happens when the empire stops growing? According to multiple reports, Netflix has grown distant. Not hostile, just disinterested. And that's worse. Sources close to industry insiders whisper about meetings postponed, calls not returned, and project pitches met with lukewarm enthusiasm. One executive allegedly said off record, "She's not trending anymore. The brand has cooled." Think about that. Not hated, not rejected, just cooled. In Hollywood, indifference is death. But Meghan? She doesn't do indifference. She thrives on momentum, applause, headlines. So when she realized the phone wasn't ringing, she did what any savvy brand strategist might do. She called them first. Insiders say she pitched multiple projects, feminist docu-series, scripted dramas, even a wellness reality concept. One source claimed she even floated the idea of a Suits reunion with a royal twist. But none of them stuck. Why? Because the buzz was gone. Netflix wasn't buying Meghan, the global disruptor. They were inheriting Meghan, the controversy magnet. And with audience fatigue setting in, execs started asking tough questions. Would viewers tune in? Would sponsors back her? Would the risk be worth the clicks? The answer? Unclear. And that's all it took. Because in a post-strike Hollywood still struggling to rebuild, ambiguity is a luxury no one can afford. Now here's where the story gets even more gutting. As Meghan's calls to Netflix allegedly went unanswered, so did the calls to others. Spotify had already pulled the plug. Her Archetypes podcast was quietly shelved. The staff behind it dispersed, and the rumor mill spun faster than ever. Her deals are drying up. She's toxic in the room. No one wants the Sussex baggage anymore. Whether fair or not, perception is everything. And Meghan was rapidly being perceived as a risk, not a reward. So what did she do? She turned to the press. Cue the leaked stories, the anonymous sources, the tabloid teasers about exciting projects in development. A strategy that had worked before. Plant the seed. Watch the narrative grow. Only this time, it didn't. Instead of headlines about empowerment or innovation, outlets began running pieces titled, "Is Meghan Markle out of moves? The Duchess of Decline?" From Suits to silence, Meghan's Hollywood freeze-out. And the most brutal one? When even Netflix stops answering. That one hit hard. But here's the thing about Meghan. She doesn't give up easily. According to one close associate, she doubled down. She went into crisis mode. Everything was on the table. New agents, new branding, even talks about pivoting to wellness content. Yes, wellness. It's been floated before. The idea of Meghan creating a Goop-style empire, full of curated products, self-help soundbites, and Instagrammable affirmations. But there's one problem. The market's saturated. And unlike Gwyneth, Meghan wasn't coming in with quirky candor and wild curiosity. She was coming in with baggage. The same associate revealed that focus groups didn't respond well to the Meghan wellness pitch. It felt forced, they said. Too polished. Too strategic. And that's been her Achilles heel all along, hasn't it? The sense that everything is curated, calculated, controlled. Even in vulnerability, she's seen as performing. But let's pause for a second. Strip away the headlines. The shade. The royal versus Hollywood dichotomy. Imagine being Meghan in this moment. You've walked away from the most famous family in the world, risked everything for independence, bet your entire future on a brand that revolved around you. And now, that brand is floundering. You feel the silence creeping in. You feel your team hesitating, your allies whispering, your critics circling. And worst of all, you feel irrelevant. That's not just failure. That's emotional whiplash. Because Meghan wasn't used to being ignored. She'd been adored, attacked, debated, dissected, but never dismissed. And now, even that indignity was becoming real. One insider claimed Meghan started pressuring her team to reignite the conversation. She allegedly floated the idea of a bold public appearance or a candid sit-down interview to set the record straight. But the advice coming back? Let it breathe. Not because they wanted her to lose, but because they feared the blowback of trying too hard. The last thing she needed was another media moment that landed flat. But Meghan couldn't wait. She reportedly scheduled a quiet lunch with a well-known celebrity journalist. The kind of meeting that usually leads to a glowing profile or source close to Meghan headline. But the piece never ran. Why? Because, as the journalist allegedly told a colleague, there's no appetite for it right now. It's all been said. That line, that's the stuff of nightmares for a public figure. Because once the appetite is gone, it's almost impossible to rebuild. And yet, Meghan kept going. She explored new platforms, TikTok, YouTube, even considered launching a branded newsletter. But the problem wasn't the platform. It was the story, and Meghan's story had hit a wall. There were no new revelations, no fresh angles, no scandals that didn't already feel recycled. And without that, there was no reason for the media machine to engage. She was stuck in PR purgatory, not adored, not despised, just stalled. But here's the twist. While Meghan was scrambling to find her next act, Kate was quietly executing hers. Royal appearances, children's charities, soft diplomacy, no drama, no desperation, just presence. And it worked. Photos of Kate went viral without effort. Her style choices sparked trend pieces. Her speeches landed with warmth and poise. And every time Meghan tried to counter-program that with a PR push of her own, it backfired. Even her supporters began admitting it. She needs to step back, regroup. But Meghan? She couldn't afford to. Too much was on the line. Her reputation, her brand, her place in the conversation. So, according to sources, she planned one more move. A bold, unapologetic push to reclaim attention. But even her team hesitated. Some warned her it would look desperate. Others feared the backlash. And at least one staffer, according to gossip blogs, quit. And yet, the wheels were already in motion. But before the world could see what she was planning, before the rollout could begin, something unexpected happened. A leak, a private message, an internal email, something that was never supposed to see the light of day. And when it did, everything changed. Because it wasn't just PR strategy or media positioning. It was personal. It was raw. And it exposed the desperation in a way no spin could fix. But that's a story for Chapter 3, where we uncover the infamous scream, the meltdown in Montecito, and the message that tore apart what was left of Meghan's media game. Because if you thought the silence was brutal, wait until you hear what she said when no one was supposed to be listening. Did she really believe this one would work? That's the question every insider was allegedly asking once the walls in Montecito started talking. Because unlike London's marble corridors or Kensington's manicured hush, Montecito is all glass doors, eucalyptus-scented air, and staff who eventually run out of polite nods. And when the tipping point hits in Hollywood royal exile, it doesn't clang like a bell. It cracks like a teacup under the wrong kind of pressure. And according to sources, that cracking point was loud. Loud enough to hear from the driveway. Allegedly, it began the morning after Kate and William once again took control of a news cycle without lifting a finger, while Meghan lifted everything but a headline. You know how royal coverage typically lands. Decorum, tradition, ceremony. But this was a different kind of stage entirely. No gilded thrones. No trumpets or palisades. This was just Meghan, her team, and the modern aristocracy of relevance, the algorithm. Except the algorithm had crowned someone else. The screams didn't start as screams. They started as directives. Sharp, surgical, panicked. Get me on the front page, Meghan allegedly said during an early morning call with her team. Not polite, not negotiable, and dripping with the tone of someone who once had palace courtiers jump at their every eyebrow raise. But here, the courtiers were publicists. The palace was her phone. The crown was attention, and attention was gone. Over the past few years, Meghan mastered the art of disruptive publicity, interview timing, brand positioning, strategic leaks. She knew exactly how to keep the world leaning forward in its seat. But what Meghan underestimated was this. Disruption only works when people are still disrupted by you. And now, the internet treated her like a push notification everyone swipes away. So, according to staff rumors and blogger whispers, Meghan decided her next move would draw attention by invoking something too irresistible for media to ignore, her emotional reaction. Specifically, a moment of truth caught off guard. Sounds familiar, right? Cry on camera, corral sympathy, spark outrage, rinse, repeat. But this rinse cycle had run dirty. Allegedly, Meghan asked for footage to be captured that day under the guise of a new content pitch tastefully called Behind the Duchess. A doka moment. A candid snippet. Something that would look like vulnerability. Not strategy, but also absolutely strategy. Her team set cameras in the living room. You know the vibe. Minimalist gray sofas, tasteful art, Montecito sunshine. Nothing that screams British monarchy. Everything that whispers California rebirth. But here's the theatrical flair. Meghan allegedly wanted to walk in mid-conversation, appear overwhelmed, and lose it just long enough for an emotional hero moment to be edited later. Edited to trend, but real enough to haunt. And haunt it did. Allegedly, as the cameras rolled, Meghan began rehearsing lines with her PR advisor. Perhaps something like, "I gave up everything. They're silencing me. I'm fighting for truth." Except those lines were placeholders. Meghan wanted the meltdown, not the monologue. And according to one anonymous staffer who observed the setup unfolding, Meghan's voice rose. Not softly, not in the trembling for effect way her interviews often employed. No, it rose in frustration, then fury, then panic. Because while they were rehearsing, another alert hit her phone. Another Kate headline. Another future king glow up for William. Another audience comment online. Kate doesn't need PR. She is PR. And that's when the placeholders burned. That was supposed to be me. Imagine the room freezing. Aides awkwardly glancing at one another. Publicists staring at their coffee like it might spontaneously combust into relevance. And Meghan? No longer rehearsing for footage. She became the footage. Sources say the outburst was not the slow simmer of hurt pride. It was the snap and crackle of someone watching their narrative of empowerment evaporate beneath another woman's aura. Meghan allegedly shouted lines like, "They don't get to erase me. How can she be the queen everyone loves? I'm the one who broke chains." And perhaps this dagger of self-awareness. No one wants a polished fairy tale anymore. They want the boring princess who just looks good on balcony tours. Oh, the irony is so sharp you could slice a scone with it. And slice it did. Right through contradicted branding. Because Meghan built an empire on rebellion. Only to discover rebellion looks silly when the people in revolt have left the chat. So what was Kate doing while Meghan was planning her explosion? Let's set the contrast clearly. Because friction is retention fuel. Kate was in the UK, crowned in trust polls, loved by the tabloids, but also quiet, grounded, working, visiting hospitals, charities, early years initiatives. She'd become a symbol of steady service while Meghan was a symbol of feverish content sprints. Do you see what Meghan missed? Public doesn't scroll for service. It scrolls for spectacle. Except spectacle without payoff becomes parody. And we reach the most crucial pivot in this chapter. It wasn't just the audience ignoring Meghan. It was Meghan ignoring Meghan. Meaning this, she no longer saw herself as a duchess delivering a news story. She saw herself delivering a reaction. A performance of hurt might trend if it looked real enough. Except now, the hurt was exposing something very real. She never wanted freedom from the system. She wanted freedom to be the system. And audiences eventually smell system hunger like reheated leftovers at midnight. So back to Montecito. Allegedly, Harry heard the screaming from down the hall. Because if palace tension is chess, this was checkers knocked off the board. And Harry reportedly walked in as Meghan was confronting her team, saying something like, "What does screaming buy us anymore?" For context, Harry and Meghan's dynamic has allegedly evolved. From united rebels to increasingly mismatched strategists. Harry wants privacy. She wants coverage. Harry wants quiet. She wants volume. Harry wants authenticity. She wants editing room authenticity. If you've ever tried building a brand while your partner is quietly trying to dismantle the scaffolding from the inside, you know exactly why this matters. So Harry steps toward cameras and sunlight, while Meghan steps toward commentary and comms. The tug of war is not just royal now, it's existential. One insider allegedly said that Meghan glared at Harry with something between fury and fear. She wanted to be the future queen, the insider whispered. Not the woman who comments on the future queen. Even her last Doka moment revealed she didn't want to document change. She wanted to document reaction. Reaction to a photograph dominating from the other side of the world. But audiences didn't react to Meghan's reaction. That was the tragedy, and the comedy, and the fracture. As the online criticism built, Meghan allegedly demanded a final PR push. She reportedly screamed something like, "I walked away from the royals to be bigger than the royals. And now she walks in and becomes bigger than me by doing nothing." The irony here is the retention play. The queen never had to capture the room. She was occupying the whole room by default. Meghan wanted default room capture. But default capture demands oxygen, oxidation, heat. And the platform that once gave her oxygen was now delivering her an extinction file. And then came the worst blow. Not outrage. Not cancellation. But no engagement. No one wants the Sussex drama loop, Hollywood outlets began saying. The wells of whales are enough. And just as Meghan's people scrambled to edit footage into a trending vulnerability moment, Kate posted one serene family photograph. No statement. No screams. No desperation. A single image of soft power and service. And soft power without words beats desperate power with a press strategy. But what Meghan didn't expect was this twist, because this is where we create lift for the next chapter. Royal silence is strategy, too. Meghan screamed into a narrative void. The wider the void, the smaller she sounded. But the void had listened, and documented, and leaked, leaving Meghan screaming into a room that once loved disruption, only to discover disruption had moved on, crowned someone calmer, kinder, quieter. And the scream? It never trended. But it made history. History for us to unpack in Chapter 4. Harry walks in with something between frustration and finality. Kate claps back without a word, and Hollywood insiders draw lines Meghan can't blur anymore. Because if you think this scream was the humiliation, you haven't seen the fallout that Harry delivered just seconds later. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What's more deafening than a scream? Silence. Especially when it comes from the one person you expect to stand beside you, your husband, your partner, your war buddy in the trenches of monarchy and media. And yet, as Meghan Markle allegedly spiraled into panic, frantically trying to claw her way back into the spotlight with leaked emotions and desperate optics, Harry just stood there, silent, observing. No nod, no encouragement. No, you're right, they've wronged you. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that isn't absence, but presence. A heavy, unspoken presence. And for Meghan, that silence cut deeper than the headlines. Because this wasn't just a partner not backing her, it was a co-architect of their brand suddenly refusing to pick up the hammer. Let's rewind to that scene in Montecito. Meghan had just finished a now infamous alleged outburst, caught on camera, according to sources, and caught by staff who'd had enough. She was fuming, angry at the lack of coverage, furious over yet another Kate photo flooding the press. Enraged that her own perfectly timed public appearance was met with a collective shrug. And then, Harry walked in, phone in hand, expression unreadable. Did you see it? Meghan allegedly asked. The it was obvious. Kate and William, looking every inch the future king and queen. The coverage? Glowing. The reaction? Viral. The comment sections? Worshipful. Harry didn't respond. He just nodded. Barely. That's when Meghan, still shaking from her PR meltdown, reportedly let slip the line that would haunt the entire day. She's winning. And here's the contradiction. Meghan and Harry left the royal family to escape competition, to create a new path, to live in peace. And yet, every headline, every project, every Instagram post seemed to suggest one thing. They were still locked in a one-sided battle with Kate and William. Only now, the audience wasn't rooting for the rebel. They were applauding the calm. And that killed the narrative. Because what happens when you cast yourself as David, and no one sees Goliath? Meghan thought she was fighting the institution. But to the public, it just looked like she was fighting a woman who kept showing up to children's hospitals in pastel coats and soft smiles. Let's be brutally honest for a second. Kate Middleton doesn't need to make a noise. She is the noise. Meghan makes headlines. Kate becomes them. There's a subtle but crucial difference. And it's what made Harry's silence so explosive. Because deep down, Meghan expected him to rage with her. To vent. To scream about double standards. To curse the British press. To plan a comeback. Instead, Harry looked tired. Not angry. Not bitter. Just tired. One alleged staffer claimed Harry muttered something under his breath that day. Something Meghan wasn't meant to hear. They're doing it better. That sentence reportedly hung in the air like fog. Meghan froze. Because whether he meant it or not, whether it was said in resignation or regret, it confirmed her worst fear. He was seeing what the rest of the world already saw. Kate wasn't just surviving without Meghan in the picture. She was thriving. The irony? Meghan's entire brand was built on being different, breaking the mold. But now, she was desperately trying to out-Kate Kate. Matching appearances, coordinating photo drops, copying royal timing. But the public always knows when you're forcing the echo. And at that moment, Harry seemed to know it too. Now let's talk about Kate's quiet power move. Because while Montecito was metaphorically on fire, London was basking in soft royal glow. The event? A visit to a children's hospice. The outfit? Pale blue. Kate's signature calm palette. The photo? Taken by a parent, not a press pool. Unfiltered. Smiling. Candid. And it exploded online. No scandal. No interviews. No tears. Just presence. That single image was posted across royal forums, fashion blogs, parenting pages, even international news outlets. But more than coverage, it carried weight. The kind of emotional credibility you can't buy with PR. It told a story. Kate was working, serving, showing up. And that image, according to some commentators, broke Meghan. Because it landed the fatal blow. Kate hadn't responded to the scream. She'd ignored it. No statements. No palace memos. No aides briefing the press. Just a smile. A child's drawing in her hand. A little girl hugging her knees. And Meghan? She was left with cameras, cold coffee, and a crumbling brand playbook. Even supporters noticed the shift. The loudest pro-Sussex corners of social media started quieting. Some fans began posting comparisons. Some unfollowed. Others posted threads that started with, "I love Meghan, but..." And you know how those end. But what made this moment so pivotal wasn't just Meghan's reaction, it was Harry's lack of one. Because until now, he'd always jumped into the fray. Whether it was criticizing the press, defending Meghan in interviews, or lashing out in spare, Harry had always been the shield. But now, he was letting her stand alone. Was it exhaustion? Clarity? A private deal with the palace? We don't know. But what we do know is this. Harry's silence was a statement, and it hit harder than any press release. Meghan, allegedly stunned, asked him what they were supposed to do next. And Harry reportedly answered with the kind of line that slams doors without slamming anything. Maybe we stopped trying. Those 4 words might as well have been the end of the Sussex media era. Because up until then, trying was the engine. The secret sauce. The entire Sussex brand was built on trying. To be seen, to be heard, to be validated. Now the engine was stalling. But Meghan couldn't let go. So, as Harry withdrew further into quiet fatherhood and private living, Meghan, according to insiders, went rogue. She re-engaged with her team. She pushed for bolder PR. She started rewriting her own playbook. And that playbook? It got darker, riskier, even pettier. Because if you can't beat them with elegance, maybe you beat them with exposure. Which leads us into the next chapter, where Meghan begins invoking not just her own narrative, but others. Specifically, royal children. Alleged parallels. Symbolism. Even exploitation. Because when all else fails, some will draw lines that should never be crossed. And Meghan, allegedly, was about to step over one. But first, one last image. Picture Meghan, alone in the garden, tablet in hand. The new Kate photo glowing on the screen. Comments flooding in like a royal love tsunami. Likes, shares, memes. She stares. She blinks. She scrolls. And then she mutters to no one. She didn't even try. That's the part that hurts the most. Kate didn't fight back. She just won. But what Meghan did next? That would push things to a line the palace never thought she'd cross, and the public wouldn't forgive. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. It wasn't supposed to get out. That's the first thing you need to understand about that email. It wasn't a press release. It wasn't a statement for public consumption. It wasn't crafted for sympathy or PR spin. It was raw, blunt, unfiltered, and allegedly, it was never meant to be seen by anyone beyond Meghan's tight inner circle. And yet, it leaked. And when it did, it exploded like a bomb in the middle of a royal minefield already rigged with tension. Because this wasn't just another press blunder or tone-deaf quote. This was evidence. A glimpse behind the curtain. A look into what Meghan was really thinking, far from the cameras, the lighting, and the scripted podcast monologues. It was war strategy. It was media calculation. And above all else, it was desperation on digital paper. So what exactly did the email say? Let's set the stage first. According to multiple sources close to the matter, Meghan had grown increasingly frustrated with her PR team. After the viral Kate moment, the children's hospice photo, the tabloid adoration, the social media praise, Meghan felt cornered, overshadowed, ignored. She allegedly believed the media's silence about her latest initiatives wasn't an accident, but a coordinated freeze-out, orchestrated by palace-friendly outlets, and a complicit public hungry for tradition over disruption. So she did what any crisis-focused celebrity might do. She drafted a message, a directive, a demand, and the email, allegedly sent to her senior communications advisor and a select group of loyal strategists, was brutal. Here's what insiders claim the contents included: a blunt accusation that her press strategy was failing to protect her image, a directive to remind select outlets that she was still the most talked-about woman to ever enter that family, a not-so-subtle swipe at Kate, reportedly describing her as a woman who never had to fight for anything and yet is celebrated like a saint for doing the bare minimum, a request for a list of upcoming royal engagements so we can plan around them or steal momentum when necessary. But the most explosive line? Allegedly, Meghan wrote, "I don't care what we have to do. Tie me to Diana's legacy again. Drop an exclusive if we must. But I will not be erased." That sentence, according to sources, was the nail in the narrative coffin. Because it wasn't just defensive, it was offensive. It reeked of intent. It implied that the media games weren't reactionary. They were manufactured. And for a woman whose brand was built on being the outsider truth-teller, this email painted a very different picture. Not of a woman silenced, but of a woman orchestrating the noise. And once it leaked, it was over. The reaction was instant. Royal commentators pounced. UK tabloids ran headlines like, "Leaked Meghan email shows cold strategy to outshine Kate." Diana's legacy exploited again, for what? She won't be erased? Then why is she erasing herself? But it wasn't just the right-wing press piling on. Even neutral outlets weighed in. One prominent US magazine ran a profile titled, "Meghan Markle's Lost Message, From Empowerment to Ego?" And social media? Brutal. Threads exploded with quotes from the email. "Saint for doing the bare minimum?" One Twitter user wrote, "She's literally at a children's hospice, Meghan. Maybe read the room." Memes began circulating. Side-by-side comparisons of Kate hugging children versus Meghan on the cover of Variety. Captions like, "One leads with grace, the other with Google Calendar." Even longtime supporters started backtracking. The narrative shifted almost overnight. People weren't asking if Meghan was being silenced. They were asking if she was manufacturing her own downfall. And the most ironic part? The email, originally meant to regain control, revealed just how much control she'd lost. Let's talk damage control. Immediately after the leak, Meghan's team allegedly scrambled. Internally, there was panic. Rumors swirled about a mole. Was it a former employee? A disloyal advisor? Someone close to the palace? We may never know. But what we do know is that Meghan didn't issue a denial. Instead, she went quiet. No interviews. No tweets. No sources close to the Duchess rebuttals. Just silence. The kind that screams louder than any statement. But the leak's damage didn't end with the headlines. It rippled across industries. One well-known fashion house, rumored to be in early talks with Meghan for a brand partnership, quietly paused negotiations. A podcast company allegedly pulled out of a tentative development deal. Even Netflix, still lukewarm from the underperformance of her previous content, reportedly canceled an internal meeting about a proposed docuseries focused on powerful women reclaiming narratives. That proposal? It was to star Meghan as herself. Now it was dead, because the narrative she was trying to reclaim had already been leaked. And it wasn't one of power or truth. It was of calculation and entitlement. But perhaps the most devastating part of this entire saga was how the royal family responded. They didn't. No comments. No palace press release. Not even as sources say the Queen consort is disappointed. Just nothing. And that silence? It worked. Because while Meghan's team fumbled, the palace glided. While Montecito plotted counterattacks, Kate attended another engagement. This time speaking at a domestic violence shelter, wearing recycled fashion, and exuding what commentators called quiet courage. No drama, no tension, just presence. And once again, Meghan was forced to watch from the sidelines as the woman she claimed never had to fight for anything effortlessly won another PR war by doing exactly what Meghan couldn't. Nothing. But let's go deeper. Why did this leak hit so hard? Because it violated the one thing the public still wanted to believe. That Meghan's intentions were pure. That even if she was flawed, even if she made missteps, she was coming from a place of authenticity. The email shattered that illusion. It suggested she wasn't reacting to injustice. She was orchestrating manipulation. And while manipulation might be tolerated in Hollywood, it's radioactive when wrapped in royal silk. Because once the audience feels played, it doesn't forgive. It tunes out. And Meghan knew it. That's why, in the days following the leak, insiders say she went dark. Phone off. Curtains drawn. Staff reduced. One aide allegedly described her as rattled in a way we've never seen before. And Harry? According to sources, he was livid. Not because of the email, but because it was real. And now it was public. Because in that moment, Harry saw their brand not as wounded, but as exposed. The veil had lifted. The curtain had fallen. And what remained? Two people, stranded between truth and theater, being devoured by both. But the real tragedy? That email wasn't Meghan's biggest mistake. It was just the warning shot. Because the next move she made, that would involve people who should have never been brought into the war. People who were supposed to be off limits. People who couldn't fight back. That's right. The children. Because when desperation meets legacy, some lines get blurred and others get obliterated. And in Chapter 6, we'll peel back the curtain on how Meghan's next strategy allegedly involved using symbolic parallels between her journey and the next generation of royals. And let's just say, not everyone inside the palace took that lightly. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What happens when the town that once rolled out the red carpet suddenly won't even return your calls? Hollywood is a city of smiles. But those smiles are often veneers, propped up by publicists, pressure, and perfectly timed favors. It's not personal. It's business. But for Meghan Markle, it felt deeply personal. Because for the first time since she and Harry stepped away from the monarchy and into the warm embrace of California dreams, the doors were beginning to close. And fast. This was the freeze-out. The whispers had already begun back when archetypes quietly fizzled. When Spotify slammed the door with a firm, "We're not renewing," and a Netflix executive publicly questioned the productivity of their multi-million-dollar deal, the writing was on the wall. But Meghan didn't want to see it. She believed she was still a brand, still a cultural icon, still someone who could shift narratives with a single quote or curated image. But in Hollywood, relevance isn't a trophy you get to keep. It's rented, hourly, and Meghan's lease was running out. Let's rewind. After the leaked email debacle, where Meghan was accused of plotting media manipulation, slamming Kate, and explicitly strategizing headline stealing, Hollywood power players began reassessing. Not because they were shocked, but because they were embarrassed. Embarrassed that they had aligned with someone now being seen as desperate. The floodgates opened behind closed doors. Insiders from agencies, studios, and digital platforms began distancing themselves. Meetings were postponed. Introductions went unanswered. And, perhaps most telling, media coverage dried up without warning. Not negative, not controversial, just gone. A chilling, sterile silence. And silence, in this industry, is the kiss of death. So what caused the freeze-out to escalate? One word: liability. According to several entertainment columnists and studio whisper networks, Meghan was increasingly viewed as high risk. Her projects were often described as all build-up, no delivery. The Netflix docuseries had buzz, but not staying power. The podcast was heavily edited and lacked rewatchability. And the public's attention was shifting elsewhere. The media had grown tired of the me against the monarchy storyline. So did the audience. And Hollywood? Hollywood follows the audience. Meghan had burned too many bridges with the very industry she thought she'd conquered. Her insistence on creative control, her selective access to press, her reluctance to collaborate beyond her bubble. These were all warning signs for producers who prefer pliable, cooperative personalities. She wasn't easy. She was exacting. And when her star began to fade, those quirks were no longer charming. They were inconvenient. One producer, off the record, allegedly said, "She came in like Beyoncé meets Princess Diana, but the product didn't match the packaging." Ouch. Then came the red carpet incident. A major entertainment charity gala. Meghan had reportedly been invited weeks prior, but when she arrived with her team, things were off. No marquee placement. No red carpet photos. No interview lineup. She was ushered to a secondary entrance. Smiled. Posed. Left early. And the photos? They never surfaced. Not because the press was banned, but because no one took them. That was the moment she realized something was wrong. Once upon a time, Meghan could sneeze in a Beverly Hills Whole Foods and TMZ would build a 14-slide gallery around it. Now, she could attend an event in full glam and not even trend on Instagram. That's not shade. That's frostbite. But it didn't stop there. Several invitations were reportedly rescinded. Meghan's name was quietly removed from a scheduled panel at a female empowerment summit. A brand deal with a major clean beauty company fell through after internal review. And the final gut punch? A popular late-night talk show, one that had previously fawned over her during her Suits days, declined to book her as a guest for the upcoming season. Not because of scheduling, but because, according to one showrunner, it's just not a good look right now. Let that sink in. The woman who was once seen as the future of modern royalty, the bridge between crown and culture, was now being seen as bad optics. Even her social connections began thinning. Friends who once posted brunch selfies with her went quiet. Stylists who once begged to dress her were now investing in newer, less controversial clients. And PR circles began to question whether the Markle effect was reversible. One influencer who had attended a past gathering at Meghan and Harry's Montecito home allegedly said, "It's like everyone's afraid to be too close. She's radioactive without even knowing it." The irony? Meghan left the UK to escape what she claimed was a toxic institution. But she entered another one, an industry where perception is power. And once that perception flipped, she couldn't stop the avalanche. What about Harry during all this? Sources suggest he retreated further. While Meghan scrambled to hold on to influence, Harry grew quieter. Friends say he began spending more time with the kids, less time on Zoom calls. He declined appearances, delayed projects, canceled 1 or 2 media interviews. Some speculated he was distancing himself not just from the public, but from her media war entirely. It's important to remember, Harry didn't grow up in Hollywood. He didn't build a career in front of cameras. He was born into it and resented it for years. So when the spotlight turned from warming glow to blistering heat, he backed off. And Meghan? She had to face the freeze-out alone. Now, here's where things take a darker turn. Because when someone is frozen out of their own echo chamber, they often do one of two things: surrender or escalate. And Meghan chose the latter. Desperate to hold on to cultural capital, she reportedly pitched a bold new docu project to several producers. The premise? Parallel legacies. A deeply personal reflection piece that compared her journey of motherhood, womanhood, and public scrutiny with Diana. And, shockingly, with Kate. The title being floated, according to Gossip Insiders, Queens in Waiting. But there was a twist. In the pitch deck allegedly circulated through private channels, there was mention of the next generation. Subtle nods, strategic visuals, descriptions of the pressures modern royal children face. And while nothing explicit was outlined, the implication was clear. Meghan was beginning to frame herself not just as a voice of the past, but of the future. And that meant talking about William and Kate's children. To some, it felt like a marketing hook. To others, a line crossed. One palace insider allegedly said, "Everyone has an unspoken rule. The children are off limits. Always." But for Meghan, every limit had already been pushed. And this new move, this insinuation, would stir a hornet's nest even Hollywood wouldn't want to be caught swatting. That's where we're heading next. Because the freeze-out wasn't just a punishment for poor PR. It was a warning. One that said, "We see the game. We're no longer playing it with you." And Meghan? She was about to try one last stunt to break the ice, and it would shatter the very foundation of royal boundaries. In Chapter 7, we dive into the article that exposed it all. The Z-lister headline that mocked her. The Twitter storm that followed. And the palace's icy response that came without a word, but shook the narrative completely. Because when the industry stops calling you back, and the monarchy won't acknowledge your name, there's only one direction left to go: down. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. It was only one word, 3 syllables, 9 letters, but it landed like a wrecking ball across Montecito. Z-lister. The headline didn't just sting. It humiliated. It tore down everything Meghan Markle had spent years meticulously building. An image of prestige, relevance, transformation, royalty, shattered in a single viral headline. And she didn't even see it coming. This wasn't the Times. or Vanity Fair, or one of the glossy PR-friendly platforms she'd once graced with choreographed vulnerability and calculated charm. No, this was a digital entertainment outlet with sharp teeth, no loyalties, and zero interest in royal protocol. A site known more for chaos than credibility. But that's what made it worse. Because they were saying it, and everyone was reading it. The article title? From Royal Rebel to Z-Lister. The Meghan Markle experiment has officially failed. Now stop for a moment. Imagine reading that. Not as a spectator, not as a critic, but as Meghan, a woman who once stood on stages next to global leaders, held the world's attention with a single interview, signed multi-million-dollar deals, and was named in Time magazine's 100 Most Influential. And now, reduced to a punchline in digital ink. The piece was brutal, not vicious, but ice-cold, clinical, and that's what made it effective. It didn't rant. It dissected. The author laid out a timeline. Starting from Meghan's fairy tale wedding to Harry, tracing the fall from grace with the Oprah interview, the Spotify breakup, the Netflix fatigue, and the mounting sense of public exhaustion. The writer used words like overexposed, inauthentic, calculated, and irrelevant. But the sentence that set the internet on fire? Meghan Markle is no longer the A-list royal disruptor she imagined. She's become a Z-lister with a dwindling audience and a shrinking Rolodex. The backlash was immediate. Not against the article, but in favor of it. People reposted screenshots of the title with captions like, "Finally someone said it." Twitter trended with hashtag #ZListMeghan. TikTok creators began stitching video essays breaking down the article's timeline. Where did Meghan go wrong? Became a trending question. Some even made parody trailers of a fictional Netflix show titled The Z-Lister. You couldn't scroll without seeing her name, but for all the wrong reasons. And Meghan? Allegedly blindsided. Sources claim she first found out about the article from a former stylist who texted her with a sarcastic, "rough day." Then came the calls from her team, most of whom had already read it before she had. Some urged her to ignore it. Others panicked. A few, allegedly, began to privately distance themselves. But Meghan wanted a response. She needed one. She demanded one. Because silence now would be interpreted as acceptance. And she wasn't going to let that narrative settle. So she did what she's done so many times before, crafted a counter-narrative. The goal? Control the spin. The plan? Leak a rebuttal. According to two industry sources, Meghan's team pitched several insider stories to friendly outlets within 24 hours of the Z-Lister article dropping. One suggested Meghan had chosen to step away from the spotlight to focus on motherhood and philanthropy. Another painted her as a victim of systemic media misogyny. And a third claimed she was working quietly on a powerful new project that would shut down the haters. But none of them landed. Why? Because the public had already decided. The Z-Lister label wasn't just a mean headline. It was a reflection of how far Meghan had fallen in the court of public opinion. Not because people hated her, because they'd stopped caring. Let's be clear, in entertainment, hate can be monetized. Scandal can be spun. Even controversy sells. But apathy? Apathy is the one thing no brand survives. And suddenly, the woman who once commanded primetime interviews and global coverage was now struggling to get a single post to trend. Every attempt to bounce back was met with mockery. A simple Instagram quote got flooded with Z-Lister gifs. A charity appearance photo was met with "Who asked?" comments. She was being memed more than she was being listened to. Even her most loyal online defenders began faltering. One fan account with over 100K followers quietly deactivated. Another switched to posting fashion inspiration from elegant royals, heavily favoring Kate and Queen Letizia. The undertone was clear. Support for Meghan was no longer chic. And then came the final slap. A major industry gala Meghan had once headlined as a keynote speaker released its lineup. She wasn't on it. Worse, her replacement? A rising Gen Z activist half her age with double her online engagement and none of the royal baggage. That's when the whispers began to reach boiling point. Had Meghan peaked? Was this the end of the Markle effect? And if so, what was left? Now here's the deeper tragedy. Meghan didn't just lose the spotlight. She lost the illusion of control. She could no longer steer the conversation. She could no longer dictate the tone. She could no longer reset the narrative when it turned against her. Because now, the media machine had moved on. And once it does, it doesn't come back. But even then, she wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Because in the days following the Z-lister chaos, insiders claim Meghan held an emergency call with her remaining team. She wanted a plan. A big one. Something that would shock, redirect, cut through the noise. Something personal. And that's when a new idea was allegedly floated. A comeback appearance. Not just any event. A speech. A public appearance with real-time cameras. A stage. A spotlight. An audience. It was risky. High stakes. All or nothing. And she was all in. The goal? Reclaim the narrative. Remind the world of her voice, her charisma, her power. But her team was split. Some begged her to wait. Let the chaos settle. Others said she had nothing left to lose. And Meghan?